Welcome to the clearest imaginable explanation of what have become known in English-speaking Western democracies as the big lie and the bigger lie. In the United States, the term has been reduced to the narrow assertion that Donald Trump was improperly deprived of a second term as president. The bigger lie refers to a much broader deception that has infected all Western democracies and exposed them to fatal insurrection deep within their own systems of governance. That insurrection has been facilitated by their mainstream media, specifically their financial jargon industry. Here, then, is a simple exposure of that bigger lie. We begin with the universal set of Arabic numerals, in this case the 9. They are used primarily to denote location, an address, a sequence perhaps, an order, and there are 9 of them in this case that we're going to deal with. The middle is very easy to detect. You can spot that simply by looking at it. The financial industry uses another word. They call it the median, and we'll see in a moment why that ambiguity. The same numerals, though, can be used for a completely different purpose, to denote quantity, an amount, how much. And in fact, the numerals themselves can be added up to a total of 45. And the financial jargon industry has invented yet another term, the mean, which is not the same as the median, but rather means the average. And the average is calculated by dividing how much by how many. And that is the first step in the big lie. It's also the first step in the bigger lie. Watch this. If we separate the series into an upper and lower section and examine the lower section a little more closely, we find that we could change the 2 to a 1 and the 3 to a 1 and the 4 to a 1, which would give us a little side stash of 6 to fool around with. And we could even move it up into the upper portion and then add it to the upper portion. And the mean hasn't changed. The reason being that even though we've added to the upper, we've removed the same amount from the lower, therefore the total is still the same, and as long as that upper number in our fraction is the same, we don't change the mean. We don't change the average. If we do want to change the mean, we need to change how much. We need to add more to the whole total so that this number is bigger, and therefore when we divide it, we'll get a different average. For example, if we change that 45 to 54, the average jumps up to 6. Or if we change the upper number to 63, we can get the average going up to 7, or the mean up to 7. So Just remember that. To raise the mean, you need to raise the how much number. And over time, we uppers have indeed taken from the lower, and slowly over time, we've degraded the lowers from 10 to 7 to 5. We've added those amounts to our own so that we go from 30 to 33 to 35. And the interesting thing is that we can claim publicly, in complete innocence, that the average has stayed the same. We haven't really changed anything. But there's a problem. We uppers want more. A lot more. But where's it going to come from? We've already bled the lowers to the bone. They've got nothing left to give. And if we want double what the system has now, which means another 45 to make this total jump to 90, and the reason we want to do that, of course, is that after that, we can still boast to everyone that, oh, look at this, we've really improved things. We've raised the mean. We've raised the average to 10. And that will be technically correct, even if it's not quite morally true. It won't be the middle. It won't be the median. But we will indeed have raised the mean, the average, to 10. And isn't that interesting? We'll have done it purely by lining our own pockets. And if we aren't getting it directly from the lowers this time, where are we going to get it? The answer is from inflation and a debt. But what are inflation and debt really? Imagine for a moment we were living in a society where there was $1 for every banana. Obviously, we'd go into the store and we'd find that a banana cost $1. But if someone were to quietly, overnight some night, double the number of dollars by just printing more of them, without growing more bananas, we'd wake up the next morning and find that $1 really only gets half a banana. Or to turn that around, we'd have to be able to say that, if it was an honest system at least, that one banana now costs $2, not $1. That is what's called price inflation. And that brings us closer to the big lie. Banks print inflation. Governments borrow it and pay interest on it, by the way. Banks call that monetary policy. Governments call it fiscal policy. The governments pull off this fiscal policy by paying for tax cuts for the wealthy, for us, and generating subsidies for our oil and pharmaceutical and electric vehicle businesses. The banks do it by crying blue murder for bailouts when they get themselves into trouble. But they both distribute that new cash that's printed upwards to us. And that is where finance meets politics. For many, many years, centuries, perhaps millennia, there has been a growing gap between the uppers and the lowers, between what in the United States is often called Wall Street and Main Street. But historically, if that gap has got too big, it's led to unrest, to leaders being beheaded, to revolution, and to war. So, how can we uppers pull it off this time without the lowers revolting? Who can we find to lie for us so convincingly, so effectively, that the clueless lowers won't catch on to what we're doing? That is what we call the bigger lie. And I'd like to introduce you to those liars. There are two sets of them. The first one speak fluent upperish. They speak upperish so fluently, they're able to convince the uppers to elect them and promise that if they do get elected, they will deliver even more subsidies to our fleets of electric vehicles racing to escape the insurgent mob of plebeian lowers threatening our Ivy League wokedom. But there's a second group at the other end of the spectrum, and they speak the other dialect. They speak fluent lowerish. They're so fluent in lowerish, they're able to convince Main Street suckers to re-elect these blubberbutt buffoons to deliver even more tax breaks to us uppers and further subsidize our lavish Wall Street towers and seaside resorts. Meanwhile, they both make KLCF rallies cheer their bellicose Pied Pipers right over the precipice where the big lie makes it irrelevant which party gets elected or which policy they lie about implementing once they're into office. And yes, I'm being a bit of a smart aleck in saying that the MAGA needs to be renamed to the KLCF, meaning keep the lowers clueless forever. This insight into the bigger lie and what's really going on all around you is brought to you by this College of Clowns, representatives of both parties, a movement that has reached into the very core and corrupted, contaminated the heart of the governance system in all Western democracies. In this presentation, we're using mainly the United States as an illustration, but we could easily do it with France or Hungary or Poland or Canada or any other of the Western democracies, and especially if we want to focus on the terminology in the English-speaking former members of the British Commonwealth and the American Empire generally. Welcome to 2024. There are very important elections in all of our countries. Remember, keep those Main Streeters clueless and keep shoveling the money uphill to us.